Let's talk kibble. So in general, kibble is not a great nutritional option for our cats. And that is because kibble is fairly devoid of good nutrition. It's super overcooked for one. Generally, the process is like 4 to 5 high heat bake times in order to get it to dry out fully, and very full of carbohydrates most of the time. You have to really look for brands that have lower carbohydrates. You're lucky to get a kibble, cats, that is less than 10% carbohydrates. Most kibbles on the market for kitty cats have between 40 and 55% carbohydrates. And that's a huge amount of carbohydrates for our cats who are obligate carnivores, which means they need proteins and fats over anything else. They really only need about 10% carbs in their diet. Now we have Trixie. Oh, hi. I have food out on the counter. I think this is why they're so excited to be in the video. Kibble is not great. And as an expert, I have to say to you that it's not great. But reality is most of us use it on some level, and I'm still using it on some level in my home. They were raised on predominantly kibble diets before I gained a better understanding of feline nutrition. I incorporate much higher quality foods into their diet. I no longer feed low-end kibble. I feed high-end kibble, but it's still kibble. The ingredients are better. There's fewer carbohydrates and actual meat ingredients versus meat meals, and very little, fillers like rice and potatoes and that kind of stuff. They're in there, but just not to the same capacity. Because my cats like their kibble, we still get it every day. They're getting about a 1/4 cup each of kibble. To improve the quality of our kibble, not only by what we're selecting to start with when it comes to a dry food, but also adding to it better quality nutrition. This is one of the brands that I use. It's Origin. I'm not paid to promote this, by the way. This is something that I have chosen for myself, and I'm sharing with you that I chose it. And one of the reasons why I chose it is because of the better quality ingredients. 90% animal ingredients. The new trend in kibble, I gotta put this down, is to use a lot of vegetable protein and calling that protein for cats. It's a totally different amino acid or type of protein, and cats are not built to utilize vegetable protein. There's not enough research or studies to say that it's okay to give it to our obligate carnivores. But we're seeing a lot of that because there's a trend in our culture, a push towards veganism, and we're also seeing it because it's less expensive for pet food companies to put it in their kibble. Quality protein is more expensive for the company. So when you're picking a kibble, and this kibble is not cheap, it's probably similar to a cost of a prescription kibble. I'm not gonna talk about prescription kibbles right now, but I have a little bit of beef with prescription kibbles under most circumstances, not all circumstances. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Do you remember? Today we want to talk about how to improve the kibble that you are using by adding freeze-dried raw food to it. There are kibbles on the market that have freeze-dried raw food included to some capacity, but it's usually a very small percentage of actual raw food. I like to be able to control the amount myself. Now Bo's joining us. It's because I've displayed food and they're like, oh, give me food. You guys already had your kibbles. You had your kibbles, you did. Oh my goodness. I think I'm gonna have to pause and put cats away. I should probably say my cats are obviously not trained to not get on the countertops, and I made that a choice. The reason why I let it go is because we can train them not to be on the countertops when we're around, but it's really hard to train them to never be on the countertop. So I don't like to have that fight with my cats. I clean my countertops, and that's what I do. One of the brands that I choose is Origin, like I said, and I also use Dr. Elsey. Dr. Elsey's also is a brand that uses predominantly animal proteins, and it is lower carbohydrate. It's probably the lowest carbohydrate kibble out there. I think most of it is between 8 and 10% carbohydrate. It's been a while since I've done the number on Origin, but I want to say it's like 20% carbohydrates, something in that window. I use a couple of different freeze-dried raw options to add to my kibbles. And I do this because the kind of kibble that comes with freeze-dried raw, it's very minimal percentage. I like to really up the percentage of raw in my kibble. So my cats are actually over time getting more raw and less kibble. Vital Essentials is a brand that I use. These are treat packets, freeze-dried raw treats. And then I use this freeze-dried raw food Quest from Steve's Raw Food. I also will use Open Farm, their freeze-dried raw food, to put in my kibble. This is a chicken, and this over here is a fish option. In my fish option, I'm gonna put minnows and salmon bites. But you'll see as I do this that I actually have to cut these up. My cats will not eat just a straight minnow all by itself because they just weren't trained to do that at a young age. So I cut them up, which I don't really love cutting up minnows, but that's what I have to do. So cutting and crushing the raw food for my cats that are, you know, they like kibble, it helps them ingest more and choose to eat more of the raw food than if I just put it in full chunks. If I just put in the full chunks of raw, they tend to pick around it. Make it smaller bites for them, and then they'll consume more of it. This is a really full bag of brand new food. The other one is partially used. And I often find that I need to add more raw food about halfway through the bag. And that's because it's hard to mix a full bag. Unless you put it in a large Tupperware bin kind of container, and then it'll be really easy for you to mix everything up. I usually choose to keep mine in the bag and then just add more raw food mixed in as I need to do so. I like to do a variety of brands of food. And my reasoning behind that is each food company has its own recipe, and so there's a different mix or balance of nutrients. I find that it's better for our cats overall nutritionally to get a variety so that their nutrition is more fully balanced. To get stuck on one brand of food, it's easy because it's what we've always done, but it's really not in our cat's favor nutritionally to just use one brand of food. Start your kitty at a younger age with a variety of foods, textures, brands, flavors, proteins. They're far less picky as they grow older and mature, especially when you think about later in life when a cat might be more prone to illness or disease, and you have to use something like a prescription kibble or prescription canned food, or change their diet dramatically. They're less difficult to transition because they're used to having had a variety of flavors and proteins from an early age. Cats can be really, we call them finicky and picky, but it's less about that. It's more about trusting what they know. It can, in their minds, be a risk to try something they've never tried before. Scientifically, the cats in the wild, the kittens, learn from their mama what are the safe food options. And so whatever she eats and brings and teaches them to hunt, that's generally what they stick to because it feels safe and it's what their mama cat taught them. When we bring kittens into our lives and we teach them what's safe to eat, just make it a variety. You can kind of see the size. They're about the size of maybe a garbanzo bean. So I just smush them with my fingers and drop them in. Okay, we're gonna do some of our chicken giblets. Some of them are really quite big, so that's, you can tell, but that's a really big chunk. My cats aren't gonna eat that really big chunk, but these, you can crush them pretty easily. If not, I just keep handy a little pair of scissors, like the salmon bites, which I'll do in a minute. Those are kind of rock hard, so I always cut them so that it's easier for my cats to choose to eat it, the things we do for our cats. Last item that I'm gonna add to the chicken flavor, and that is just chicken breast. And I'm gonna do the easier method, or the time-saving method. Can you hear me over that? Stirring allows you to gauge, how much freeze-dried raw you have in there, whether or not you wanna add more. I'm gonna stir with a spoon. You don't have to stir with a spoon. You can zip the bag and shake it, although one time I did that and the bag came unzipped while it was upside down. So I'm gonna just use this little spoon and stir, stir, stir. So now we're just gonna move on to our minnows. Here's this little minnow guy. I feel kind of sad for them. Okay, if they're tiny, like this guy, I only cut them in like 4 pieces. So the bigger one I'll cut in, 5 pieces, sometimes even 6 pieces. So it's essentially about the size of Kibble. I don't do a whole lot of minnows because my cats are still learning to accept them. I don't put in a whole bag of these. In fact, I think this is my 3rd or 4th time dipping into the minnow bag for a dry food mix. If your cat likes the minnows, then go for it, but mine are still a little iffy. Last guy, we're gonna add salmon bites. For whatever reason, they're too hard really for my fingers to smush, so I cut them. They look like they get squeezed out of a little tube, so some pieces are longer than others. And I just cut them in half or thirds so that they're about the size of Kibble. I'm just gonna scoop up a couple of samples so that you can see what it's like, the difference between one that's low on freeze-dried raw because I haven't mixed in the second round, and then compare it to the one we just mixed. So when it's all said and done, your Kibble does get kind of expensive if you put in the amount that I like to put in. Because these little bags are between $6 and $8 each where I'm located. And this bag of Origin, which is a 7-pound bag, it's around $50 for the bag. So if you add 2 of these and a partial of the freeze-dried raw meal, you're pushing your price up, and especially if you do it again halfway through the bag. So your Kibble winds up being about $100 if you're using the 7-pound bag. Now, I have 6 cats, and I feed 7 because I feed my parents' cat as well. Usually running at once, I have 3 bags of Kibble, different flavors, different brands. So it usually takes about 6 weeks, 8 weeks to get through a whole bag that's been laced with raw. But if you just have 1 cat and you do a 7-pound bag, gosh, that bag's gonna last you a while. And it should all be shelf stable. So, I mean, you'd spend about $100 or $75 with 1 cat. If you're only doing a 1/4 cup a day, that bag will last you for a long time. So you kind of have to look at it in that regard, like it stretches over time, because you're also then using raw food or freeze-dried raw meals or lightly cooked meals like smalls or canned food, right? So you're adding other types of food into your cat's diets. I really recommend no more than a 1/4 cup of Kibble a day, and especially your Kibble be laced with higher quality nutrition. Straight Kibble diets, please don't train your cat to eat canned food at the very least, and have canned food be the dominant source of their calories. Canned food has so much more moisture, as well as usually a higher quality protein and less carbohydrates overall. Canned food usually only has 10 to 20% carbohydrate fillers, so much better than Kibble. There is an old falsehood that Kibble is good for teeth. No, the answer to that is no, because the best thing you can do for teeth is high quality nutrition. In fact, generationally, cats that have been on Kibble for several generations, the kittens often lose their teeth really young. Somebody might argue against that because there's no scientific evidence, but anecdotally I've seen that teeth can go really bad, especially with full-bred cats that are raised on poor quality Kibble and they're reproducing. Kibble's not good for teeth. Cat Kibble in particular is not large sized, and so most of the cats don't even crunch it, they just swallow it whole, so there is no plaque removal, and nutritionally it gives them very little nutrition. Okay, thanks for hanging in there with me on this video, and hopefully you've learned some great tips and tricks on how to make your Kibble a higher quality protein, especially if your kitties are like mine and they still really like to eat some of their kibbles.